Hello, Void Dwellers. If you've seen these images of American students converting to Islam in the universities, you must have felt one of two things. You were either horrified, thinking that the Islamists are taking over the minds of young people, or you laughed your ass off like I did at how ridiculous they look with their piercings and uncovered hair doing the praying stance. It was hilarious. And that, and the panic response to it from the right, made me realize what exactly is going on because, like Biff says,
something very familiar about all this.
This is the same exact thing that happened with the Americanization of Buddhism and Hinduism in the 60s. And it's just as dumb. Also, it's just as temporary as well. Might I remind everyone who's panicking that even though the hippies appropriated Indian culture constantly, like these morons are appropriating a religion they don't understand, and talked about chakras and they used incense and played the music on sitar, and even the Beatles went there and learned from a guru, nothing came out of it. Americans did not become Hindu or Buddhists en masse. And the country did not change. And the hippies of the 60s became the executives of the 80s. And the same exact thing is going to happen here. Because the human race is boring and there's nothing new under the sun. Although I would say that this one indicates just how brainless and immoral American youth specifically, and young people in the West in general, have become in our era. Or at least some of them. Let's not generalize. These people are people who literally cannot tell right from wrong, cannot understand the meaning of words, and have no self-awareness to speak of. At least the hippies looked for outside influence in the direction of peace, love, and balance. These idiots think that a misogynistic Middle Eastern war religion and chanting slogans about the genocide of other people is a cool hip way to rebel against the man and the government and capitalism. Which really pisses me off because I used to be an actual rebel in my youth, fighting for real causes, in real situations, and paying the price for it as well. I mean, look at these fucking idiots.
You're hurting me! You're hurting me! Ow! 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 Help! Help!
That's not a man. That's a child throwing a tantrum. You're hurting me. How privileged do you have to be to think that just by saying it, that's enough to make everything around you stop? And he is shocked that it doesn't work, which is why he begins to wail. To point the difference, I have a little scar on the back of my head that I can still feel under the hair. And you know how I got it? When I was in my early 20s, I participated in a demonstration in Israel against the occupation and for the two-state solution. Yeah, we actual leftists, real liberals, we demonstrated for peace and justice for both sides. That's what the real left sounds like. Now, this was just after the second intifada, during which over 1,000 Israeli civilians were murdered, mostly women and children, which is always the Palestinian group's favorite targets because they don't fight back. Anyway, emotions were very high because of that, and right-wingers didn't like it that we protested against the occupation and for peace. And there was a bit of a grapple with them. Suddenly, I feel like someone kinda smacked me on the back of my head. But I ignored it. I kept on chanting our slogans and all that until my friends looked at me completely pale and told me, "Oh, we need to get you to a hospital." And I'm like, why? Turns out my entire back was just soaked with blood. I thought I was just sweating a lot. See, it wasn't a smack I got on the back of my head. It was a rock. And apparently when you get cut back there, there's a lot of blood, even if it's just a small wound. I needed, I think, like 6 stitches in the end, and I was fine. Now, that was us protesting then. Let's look at these American protesters now.
Ow! 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 Help! Help!
Ah, fucking hell. And that's why I'm not particularly worried that this is the future leaders. Americans seem to take longer these days to grow up. Most of them would grow up and they'll look back at what they did and who they supported, and they will be ashamed of themselves. The lies and stupidity they believe in right now, you can only sell that to children or to people with the cognitive capacity of a child. Once your brain develops and you grow up, you stop believing in Santa Claus, in miracles, and that a misogynistic war religion from the Middle East that would have executed you if they could for doing the press stance with your hair uncovered and the piercing on your face is some kind of a way to rebel against the man. Like one of my all-time favorite vampires says,
Me and mine don't follow no stinking rules. We're rebels.
No, I'm a rebel. You're an idiot. Give the lot of us a bad name.
Also, their horrific anti-Semitism. The fact that when they say the man, they actually mean the Jew. That would be another source of shame for them in the future. These are people whose children would be ashamed of them. And they are smart to cover their faces so they can tell their children in the future that it wasn't really them. And that's really the one very significant thing that does separate this batch from the hippies. The hippies were young, misguided, naive, and sometimes extremist in their way of thinking. Yes, but they were never mean. They were never violent just for the sake of being violent. They stood up against racism, not for it. These kids today are simply bad people. Pure and simple. They weren't born bad people, they grew up in a society that made them bad people. A society that not just allows immorality, it encourages it. And unlike what the right says, I'm not talking about sex and drugs. That is not the problem. The problem is not that people get to sleep with whoever they want as long as their consent and smoke a joint. Fun is not the problem. The problem is postmodern indoctrination that teaches these kids that there is no truth and therefore they are always right. And no objective moral code exists, and therefore horrific acts are sometimes okay. The same indoctrination the Nazis and other fascist movements were eating up as well. The years pass, the century changes, nothing really changes. Because if there is no truth, why would I pay attention to what anyone else says? I'm just as right as they are if there is no truth. And if that's the case, why not use force to enforce my truth, which is of course the correct truth, because it's mine. I saw recently a video of a dude beating the shit out of a girl in a girl's bathroom in an American school. Now I know that people said it's a transgender girl, and normally I completely respect that and would treat any transgender person as the gender they identify as. But if you behave like a dude, I'm going to call you a dude. And this dude is 3 times the size of the girl he punches. And he drags her by her hair and punches her face repeatedly. Honestly, it was hard to watch. And you won't believe how many people defended that act, saying it's a trans woman being pushed to the edge and the girl being beaten is not even the victim here. Pushed to the edge. That's pretty much what wife beaters say. She wouldn't shut up. She wouldn't stop complaining. She pushed me to the edge. For good people, it doesn't matter if they pushed you to the edge. You do not use violence against people who are not even half your size. It's as simple as that. But these simple moral values have been cracking for years and years now. How many times have you seen men and boys online celebrating a man beating a woman because she had it coming, or she was in his face, or she slapped him first? Either violence is unacceptable or it is. There's no gray area here, and that's what these young people prove. If you say, well, in some cases, the stupid human creature will always take it to the extreme. Always. So it starts with a man being forgiven for hitting a woman because she slapped him first. Then we move on to a dude in a dress pretending to be a woman beating the shit out of a girl, and it's okay because he was pushed to the edge. And you end up having these little monsters justifying burning kids alive, mutilating children, raping and murdering little girls and women during the 7th of October atrocities because they are freedom fighters. No morals, no values, nothing has meaning except how they view themselves in the mirror that is the echo chamber of social media. So of course they think a misogynistic war religion from the Middle East that allows you to beat women if they don't listen to their father or their husband is some kind of an exotic way of sticking it to the man. And that's another thing, the way they see Islam is exotic. Because they're privileged, clueless Westerners who know nothing about the world. You know, I meet a lot of people online from different political camps, and many times when it's right-wingers, we talk about the danger that we both see in the West's tolerance towards Islamism. And sometimes they would eventually say something like, and therefore we should just deport all Muslims, or we should ban Islam. And I always say, whoa, no, I can't agree with that. There's a difference between Muslims and Islamists, and I cannot support such generalization and persecution. And the last person I said it to got annoyed with me and said, why are you Israelis always like that? You are the third Israeli to say something like that to me. I thought you of all people would understand. Well, that's just it. We do understand. That's why we know there's a difference between Islamists and Muslims. Because if you're from Israel, you grew up with Muslims. 24% of the country are Arabs, and most of them are Muslims. And if you're from Israel, maybe you were employed by Muslims, as I was. And maybe you served in the IDF with Muslims. To us, Islam is not exotic. People in the West get all excited when they see a kafia or a jalabiya. To me, that's just part of the normal view, having lived in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The truth is, the support the Islamists enjoy these days in the West does not come from real acceptance. It doesn't come from a good place. It comes from either a deeply stupid place or a racist, condescending place. How adorable these people are and their exotic beliefs. They do not see the threat because they don't treat Middle Easterners as adults, as real people. That's why they believe that any violent act they commit is not their fault. It's always somehow white people's fault, because they are racist and they only see white people as the responsible adult. And those Middle Easterners can't be held responsible for their actions any more than a child can. They are racist, condescending, and appalling, which is why they brainlessly follow in a fad. But that also means that it is temporary, it is a fad. In 10 years' time, no one is going to wear a kafia around their neck to show how leftist and cool they are. Now, that doesn't mean that we should ignore what is happening, the way they attack Jews as a mob, and the way the media ignores it and tries to make it look like legitimate protests instead of neo-Nazi rallies wrapped in a kafia, which is exactly what they are. No, there is definitely a need to look at what makes the youth of America and other places in the West so hateful, stupid, ignorant, racist, and violent. Again, not all youth, but some of them. And I think that if we do investigate it thoroughly, we'll find that there are two systems in the West that are failing us and that have failed this generation. Number one, education, which these people didn't get and do not get, not even now when they are in university. The fact that universities do not have to follow a proper curriculum and can be persuaded what and how to teach by donors and the will of the students themselves, who are in fact donors themselves, that is an atrocity. Higher education is the only place where literally the insane have actually taken over the asylum. The place where young people are supposed to go to learn how to think, and their stupid ignorant wishes and changes what they teach to appease the donors, which is why most universities who have donors from Muslim countries, coincidentally, do not teach Jewish history. A 3,000-year-old culture that the entire world plagiarized, and they don't think it's worth learning its history. That's not a coincidence. The presidents of those universities are just puppets. They have no control over what is being taught or how, because the perversion of the West is that universities are businesses. So who controls them? Those who put the money in the cash box. So that's one thing that we have to change. And the second is, of course, media. Mainstream media, along with social media, are the two polluters of the human mind in our lifetime. Because of them, the age of information is now the age of disinformation. Lies are now more common in both mainstream media and social media than the truth. In fact, they also follow the postmodern doctrine that says there is no truth, so they might as well just say whatever the fuck they want and treat it as if it's truth. And here's a hard pill to swallow for some people. Most people are fucking stupid. Not all, but most. 65%, 70%. Which means billions and billions of stupid. The human creature is not the peak of creation. It's not much more than a chimp that can talk. It's not smart, it is easy to manipulate, it is simplistic, and it doesn't even have control of itself or its thoughts. If you place the human creature in an environment where you don't teach them how to think, you blur the line between truth and lies, and you tell them there is no truth at all, you know what you get? Morons with their hair uncovered doing the Muslim stance of prayer to show respect to a religion that would have had them executed for doing exactly that. And to those who would say I'm exaggerating, tell that to the Iranian women raped and beaten to death by the Islamic regime just for not covering their heads. Oh, I forgot, you don't care about them, do you? Standing up for them doesn't help you hate on Jews, so of course they are invisible to you. No camping on campus for them, is there? We live in a world full of monsters. We need to start realizing it and change our ways accordingly.